Hello there. This has been one of the most memorable years of my life, and a big part of that has been the travel that I've done around the United States in that time. I flew more times in the space of this entire last summer than I did in the 10 years prior to it, I think. A lot of that took me out west for the first time. It was quite an eye-opening experience to see what the earth has to offer as you get out west, because it's just so eye-catching, whether that takes you into the Rockies or what have you. So I just wanted to do a top 7 list, because 7 is a nice round number. It's a good number. I mean, it's lucky for some, isn't it? And 7 memorable moments from my travels across America in 2018. And so let's start by looking back at the state of Idaho. So I found myself on a business trip in Idaho Falls in the southeast of Idaho. I was there on business, as I was for all of my visits around Idaho, and I got quite a bit of free time just to check out the area. But it's often in the small towns in America where you find a certain amount of charm that perhaps you weren't quite expecting. I didn't know what to expect when going out to Idaho Falls. I expected to find a fall of some kind, but that's because I'm clumsy. That was a joke about falling over. No, Idaho Falls has, of course, waterfalls, and it's sort of famous for that. And they were very nice. I took an afternoon and evening stroll. It was height of summer by these falls. Just walked around on my own for 2 hours until it got dark, and just very nice to take in the area and the ambience of the waterfall as it came down, because that's what water does. That's gravity. Let's be honest. And it was just beautiful. It was just very, very nice to be in that particular area. There was a Mormon temple in the distance, and that provided a sort of good focal point for some photography that I was able to take while I was there. And it was just very pleasant, very nice, nice little place to walk around. One anecdote actually is that when I was back at the hotel, I was just sitting there minding my own business, actually ordering a lift ride to those very waterfalls, and I hear this British accent out of the corner of my eye. Ear is how you usually process sounds, and I thought, that's interesting. 2 British people in this small town. That's very odd, but I thought nothing of it, and I just sort of carried on trying to order my lift ride. And then that person comes over and says, "Excuse me, are you Lawrence from Lost in the Pond?" And I said, "Yes, I am. Hi, I'm James. I'm also from England. I just happen to live here in Idaho." Quite a bizarre moment. So I think I'd add that in as a sort of bonus round to this video, that I got recognized in the small town of Idaho Falls. But that whole trip was full of unexpected moments. But something else that was an unexpected quirk to 2018 included the following. Yeah, I don't know what it was about this year, but I saw an inordinate number of Capitol buildings. I suppose I was in a large number of capital cities this year, including and starting off with Boise, where I was able to snap this nice picture, again at the height of summer. It was just sort of a marvellous view of all the traffic going in, and it was a nice little Capitol building. I even got to go inside this particular one. It was really weird. I mean, I was able to walk in. There was barely any security. I suppose the politicians weren't really in session, but I even got to go into the chambers where they do all of their debate and all of that good stuff. But honestly, the 2 others that I saw that year, firstly Salt Lake City's Capitol building, was deeply striking. It was such a striking looking building that I had to photograph it from all sides. Didn't get the chance to go in, but that wasn't really a problem on this occasion, because it provided actually quite spectacular views of parts of Salt Lake City, and that was enormously gratifying. And then my favorite Capitol building that I got to witness this year was in Charleston in West Virginia. It was just this gold domed building that I think was built in the 1900s, and it was just this marvelous sight that you could see pretty much from all around the city. I got to go inside and see a little bit of that, but really the joy was to be had outside and taking those photographs. And that particular area of Charleston is really pretty nice, because they have a historical museum right next door to it that sort of charts the history of West Virginia, essentially, and how that unfolded. That was really quite lovely and relaxing as well. But when it comes to relaxation, nothing can hold a candle to our next entry. Oh, I'll tell you what, Lake Coeur d'Alene was absolutely beautiful. I mean, it was such a lovely area to spend a day or two in. Again, on business, but I was able to get away for a few hours and just go out onto the lake. And it was a guided tour. You know, I don't usually go in for those sorts of things, but, you know, when in Rome or when on business. And the tour guide, you know, brought to my attention that there were eagles, bald eagles, in the trees around the lake, something that was quite an alien concept to me. I mean, it's the only time I think I've ever seen a bald eagle in person before, if that is indeed the correct term, would be at a zoo. But this was out in the actual wild, and they just sort of, you know, lived up in these trees and watched us all go by. Thankfully, none of them tried to attack me again, you know, like they did at the zoo. And it was just really, really nice. There were people parachuting or paragliding, I suppose you call it, you know, over the lake and things like that. And just a really nice area. I can imagine that it's, well, I mean, it is. I saw this with my own eyes, a very popular tourist destination. A lot of children there, too many children, frankly. Spoiled the calm, serene nature of it all. No, I'm kidding. Although there were kids that were jumping in over the rocks, you know, hopefully that didn't escalate into mindless violence. If you get the chance to go out to Lake Coeur d'Alene, or just Coeur d'Alene in general, because then you get to see the lake and then be on it, I highly recommend it. It's a beautiful part of Idaho, and you know, it's not too far as well from Washington State. So if you want to go into sort of the Grenliness of Washington State, Grenliness is a word I coined. It means of green. Just never mind. Then you can do that as well. So that's really fantastic. And sticking with Idaho, I did something, well, for the first time this year. I climbed a rocky mountain. As long as I live, I will never forget the day I climbed up Table Rock Mountain. It's not the tallest mountain by any means in even the state of Idaho, much less the United States. It was just 900 feet up. But for me, you know, having just overcome some health problems, I think, earlier in the year, this was quite a leap forward. I wasn't quite expecting to do that on this trip, rather just to photograph these mountains and nothing else. But it turns out that tragedy struck that morning. My cat had been sick for a while, and we had to put the poor little bugger down, and to this day I miss him dearly. But I used that sort of that sadness and that tragedy to fuel my my walk to the top of this mountain. But the payoff was fantastic. I mean, you get to the top and you see the whole of Boise below you, you know, and that's not something I ever expected to want to see, but once I did see it, it was quite a majestic sight from up there. Certainly among the most memorable travel experiences, not just this year, but of my life. I mean, it was great. I was there alone, you know, it was one of those solitary walks, but well worth it. Well worth it just to look down and I don't know, it was just this realization that I'd come a long way, both metaphorically and physically, although 900 feet does seem quite poor now that I think about it. By comparison, though, Table Rock is practically Everest compared to Ensign Peak. But it wasn't really about the size here, right? Because size doesn't always matter. I keep telling myself that. But this particular mountain, it was all about the view. And I talked about the view that you get at the top of the steps of the Capitol building in Salt Lake City. But the view atop Ensign Peak is pretty majestic itself, because down beneath you is the Capitol building, and surrounding that is the whole of Salt Lake City. And even for somebody who previously had a fear of heights, which, by the way, all of this climbing has helped to somewhat eradicate this year as well. So that's something else that I could definitely point to. But the view from up there was spectacular, because not only did you have the city below, but you had all of the mountains, bigger mountains, much bigger mountains than the one I was standing on, all around you. And it was just marvelous to see. There was also this haze throughout the city, because there'd been a pretty bad fire, a forest fire, in that part of the world that has sort of spread smoke across the city and surrounding areas, even up to the top of Idaho, for, you know, that particular summer. It somehow lended a sort of atmospheric view from up there, which was quite nice. Now, I had other reasons for being in Salt Lake City. I'll get to those, not now, just in a later video, in the new year. I've promised you that already, so stay tuned. But the most memorable, I think, or the thing that sticks out most is certainly this climb to the top of Ensign Peak, even though I got stung by a wasp for the first time in my life. I mean, it's been a year of firsts, not all of them good, but memorable. I'll never forget that wasp, the little... Oh man, Alcatraz. It was grim. I mean, there's no getting around it, but my goodness, it stays with you. It was a great experience. I mean, great is an odd word to use, I suppose, when you're going into a prison facility that was known for being so barbaric and so sort of, well, like I said, grim. It's just this very concrete, industrial-looking island that's cut off from San Francisco, and you can just imagine being a prisoner there back in the day and seeing San Francisco across the bay and knowing you couldn't touch it, knowing you were trapped. You know, paradise was there, plus Oakland. Yeah, I can say that because my sister-in-law lives in Oakland. Oakland was actually a very charming place. Very much enjoyed it. But yes, Alcatraz, just unbelievable. And of course, you know, there were allusions to and stories about Al Capone, who I'm very familiar with, not on an intimate basis. We don't go back or anything like that. He just happened to share a city with me. Not at the same time. He's been dead a while now. But those stories had a sort of unique place in my heart, I think. And it was just fascinating to see that chapter in American history. And one of two main reasons, I think, that San Francisco stands out for me the most. And the second reason is our final entry. I'd always wanted to see the Golden Gate Bridge. You know, it's obviously a tourist attraction, and I'm not somebody that necessarily goes in for the tourist attractions, but growing up, I was quite fascinated with that particular bridge. Growing up in England, I lived 25 miles away from a bridge not dissimilar to it, the Humber Bridge, which at the time was the longest suspension bridge in the world, and to know that there was a more famous one on the other side of the world, or on the other side of the ocean, or either ocean, I suppose, Pacific or Atlantic, depending on how you look at that. It's madness. That thirst for seeing it was propagated further, I think, by A View to a Kill, the James Bond film, and my hero, Max Zorin, played by Christopher Walken, is not really my hero, although he did make me want to commandeer a blimp and fly it around, but just not in a villainous way. You know, I just wanted to view the Golden Gate Bridge from above. Didn't get to do that. In fact, my first view of the Golden Gate Bridge was driving over it in thick fog, so I didn't really view it at all. But even that was, you know, quite an experience in itself. Very atmospheric, and you didn't know where the bay was. You couldn't see it, so it was quite ghostly in many ways, but enjoyable. But the real standout moment for me with that bridge was when I convinced my wife and sister-in-law that we should go onto the west side of the bridge as the sun was setting. And it was just an absolutely stunning view of the Golden Gate Bridge in all of its golden/red glory. It was just one of the most iconic things I've ever seen, and I couldn't stop staring at it and taking photographs. I just didn't care. I was like a boy in a candy shop at that point, and the Golden Gate Bridge was a particularly succulent chocolate bar. That's a terrible metaphor, but it was a fine bridge, and still to this day is. So I think that rates as my #1 most memorable travel moment of 2018. What were yours? Let me know in the comments below, and thank you for watching Vlogmas. Thank you for watching this channel, and continue to do so. We've got one more video before New Year, and then it's bye-bye. It's not bye-bye. There are plenty more videos coming in the new year. Don't worry about that. It just won't be every day. All right, thank you. Bye. Thank you for watching this episode of Lost in the Pond. Don't forget to hit my stupid little face to subscribe, and please share this video with the world. Hit me up on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, and if you would like to support this channel, please do so at patreon.com/lostinthepond.